Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And today I have such a special guest who is talking about something that honestly is pretty close to my heart, and I absolutely loved getting into discussions with. So thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. My dad had met her probably what a few months, weeks, I'm not exactly sure the
Weeks ago.
timeline for the 10x stages. And she has actually done some really incredible thing with 10x stages with Grant Cardone, which if you don't know, it's basically like a lot of public speaking, getting in front of a room and speaking in front of I'm sure lots of people,
Lots of
which is
people.
pretty daunting. um but correct me if I'm wrong, you had gotten pretty far in the competition from what I remember, right?
Yes, from the Speak Off, there were 27,000 people that registered, about 1,800 that auditioned. 150 were chosen to go to Miami for a competition. Then they hit the chopping block and they chopped it down to 30. I was in the top 30. Then they chopped it down to 12. And unfortunately, but fortunately, I didn't make it to that 12. But the feedback and the information and the impact that I made was even greater than being in that 12.
That is incredible. Top 30 is huge. I feel like sometimes people forget that, like, in this world I feel like we live in, sometimes we have these different types of accomplishments, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to realize, like, oh, that actually is a huge accomplishment, right?
Yeah.
Look at like YouTube views, like, oh, 100 views, that's not a lot. But can you imagine standing in front of 100 people? So
Yes.
getting from, you said 25,000?
27,000 that registered for this event. Yes, they three major cities that they went to, plus a virtual, and in search to be the great American speaker, the best speaker in the world. So I would honestly say, like, even being in that 150, I was like, wow, I'm one of the 150. Like, out of all these people. And then when they did the final cut and they chose the 30 that they would be airing on the television show, and they called my name out of a room of, they broke it into several rooms. So it was very interesting. And there were 5 rooms, and there were about 25, 30 people in each room. In some rooms, only 3 people got chosen from that room. Some 5 people got chosen from that room. And I was standing there and they called the first name and I'm like, okay, it's going to be okay. I'm in the 150. And then when they called the second name and it was my name, I was like, it was very exciting. But to see so many great speakers and to look at yourself and say, hey, my message can really hang with these messages that these motivational speakers are speaking made me really proud, because a lot of people don't do what I do. It was like a lot of the same stories, overcoming. And of course, it is overcoming for me in the early childhood field, but my message was quite different. And I was really happy that my message was one of those that was chosen to go further.
Yeah, I would love for you to share just kind of a brief synopsis of that journey because you're in early child development, which I think is such a critical role in a child's life. It is
Foundational.
not it is not a small thing, and it is so incredible what you do. So I'd love for you to share a little bit of like how you got into it and what do you currently handle.
So I started this journey with Barbie dolls, right? So I used to line up all my Barbie dolls, dress them up, and pretend like I was their teacher and played school. And every year at the end of the school year, all the worksheets, and I'm talking about a long time ago, way before, when you guys have electronics, but we used to have worksheets and overhead projectors and different things like that. So I used to get all the worksheets and bring them home and play teacher with my dolls. And so teaching has always been a part of who I was. And I remember one spiritual leader told me, it's like, if you can remember something that you enjoyed doing as a child that you would absolutely do for free, that is your chosen purpose. That's your given purpose. And I thought about being many things when I was in going into college. I was like, I should be this big something. And I would see teachers like, oh, just a teacher. I need to be something important. But after really soul searching, I knew that my calling was teaching, and I had a love for children that it was just undeniable. I just loved being around them, doing activities with them. So I started off as a paraprofessional in the school district. I loved what I did. I worked with children with special needs, and it special needs have a very special place in my heart. I went to school while working as a paraprofessional. I had a family really young. I got married right out of high school, and shortly after, my two daughters came, and I was going to school and working as a paraprofessional. And it became a point in my life where it was hard to decide whether I would stay teaching in the school district, still going to school, or go and work for childcare, because I really could not afford to put both of my daughters in childcare while I was going to school to be a teacher and working as a paraprofessional in the school district. So I shifted over to a childcare center. And I remember that childcare center like it was yesterday, because I was like a girl off the street. They were like, hey, come in here, get in this 3-year-old classroom. And when I tell you it was the worst 3-year-old classroom in the whole wide world, it was rough. And so overcoming that experience, I became, I love what I did. And so I just got the hands-on experience and went in there and did what I knew and I love to do. And someone saw me and said, you should be teaching other teachers to do this. Meanwhile, I was working a part-time job at a teacher supply store, and my aunt, which her name, we called her Toots. And that's what Training You to Succeed, my company, stands for. Told me, she was like, you are so great in the classroom. Those kids love you so much. You need to teach other teachers how to do that. And I'm like, nobody wants to listen to me. I'm like all of 20. And what person wants to hear what a 20-year-old had to say in the classroom? And I was very surprised that when I stepped out after she passed away, that people did want to hear what I had to say about overcoming, dealing with challenging behaviors, all of that. So that started my journey from hosting teacher trainings. From there, I kind of grew in the early childhood field. So I went from being a classroom teacher to a center director, to being a district manager, running multiple centers, helping people open up centers. And today I currently own an early childhood educational service that gives teacher credentials, director credentials, and everything that you need to be an early childhood teacher, from hands-on workshops, play-based workshops, online classes. And I also own an early childhood academy that I use as a training center for teachers. So from a classroom teacher to this, I know that now I can impact more than just 20, 30 kids a year. I can impact millions of kids, because for every teacher that I touch, that's 30 to 40 kids that they're going to touch and impact from my one message. So that's where we're at today, and hoping that that grows into something even bigger.
Yeah, that is so incredible. And I love that because I think that it's just a completely different set of skills. And anyone who isn't in the teacher field or in field working with young kids, they I feel like have a lot of like different preconceived notions on how you should handle certain things, especially when it comes to difficulties. It's like, oh, it's just like there's different ways to do a lot of things, and it is not on a very similar level. But I did figure skating coaching for kids um, for about 2 to 3 years, and I handled the really, really young kids. So this was
Oh,
like they just kind of learned to walk, and now they're kind of
mhm.
learning to skate kind of
Figure
kids.
skate.
Yeah. Like these were like I think they're like three, like I think they started like 3 or 4. Like they were pretty young
Young.
kids.
Uh-huh.
And I just had a blast with them. Like anytime someone needed a substitute, I was like, you can call me. I never do anything during that time at night, and I love them, and everyone's like, I don't want to deal with these. Like, I will deal with your kids. I love them. Even if it's like repetitious, like they just stand up and sit down. I
Right.
It's so fulfilling to me.
Yes.
With that kind of being said, especially as we go into more of a digital age when it comes to education and parenting and kids, like a lot of the iPad kids and stuff. Um, which, fun fact, I've never had to deal with because I was born in a generation where we didn't even really have iPads. So I
Right.
was used to those like old worksheets and just playing with my Barbies and things like that. I didn't have anything else.
Like
Um,
me.
yeah. What are some of your, I guess, maybe tips for some, just young kids for them to go out and do things that are maybe not on their iPads and for kind of different ways that you think that is helpful for them to learn, if that kind of makes sense.
So I think engagement and social interaction is something that's very important. We've come into a time where teens are, secluded. They don't want to interact due to a number of reasons, social anxieties, not having those communication skills. And I would challenge anyone, any teenager, especially middle school, high school, to get in something that's going to challenge your communication skills and it's going to force you to use your social skills and help you deal with emotional instabilities like constructive criticism, hard feedback, dealing with different personalities, and from your debate club to even if you're homeschool, getting into a group where you guys meet up in person as opposed to meeting up online or hiding behind a keyboard and just sending messages or sending text messages, because we can say anything over text. But when you have to have that face-to-face communication, a lot of teenagers shut down. And even having teenagers work for me, I see that it's like they won't say what they have to say, but then later on they'll send you a text message. And I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me that to my face so that we can work it out, so that we can communicate? And that's because they lack those skills. And I would encourage anyone who wants to be successful in life, own a business, and do great things, get those communication skills in check, those social interactions, being able to get to know and be around people, and especially those emotional skills, because if you don't have your emotions under control, you can't lead people and you're going to struggle with finding your true self and finding the things that you really want to do in life. So, I mean, for anyone, especially in your age group and even younger, you got to get out there and start creating groups of people that meet in person.
Yeah, I think that's a great, yeah, I think that's a really great way for people to get out of their comfort zone, because sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
seek advice that is the opposite of what we need to hear. And
Mm-hmm.
especially I think because of the pandemic, it was a lot, easier to get by and Zoom and just texting and things like that, and we could get away with it for a really long time. But there's definitely a reintroduction that needs to be happening for a lot of these kids, because when I was like 13, 14, my dad put me in a public speaking class. So
Because he knows the importance of communication.
yeah, oh yeah, he does. So public speaking with my peers was so different to me, because I had done some public speaking for my dad. He used to host events and seminars, and when I was like 8 or 9, I would go in front and speak in front of them. Nothing intelligent or even half the time coherent. But these people were like nice and they were friends of my dad, so they'll like entertain my 8-year-old self talking about American Girl dolls for like 2 or 3 minutes, because like, oh, he just wants her to get some speaking. Didn't really speak, but when I had to go and speak in front of my actual peers, people
Years.
who I know, people who perceive the world in the same way I do, it was really terrifying.
It is.
And even if I was like kind of half good at public speaking, it was still really terrifying to
And
me.
to me, to this day, I can't eat before I go on stage. I cannot eat anything before I speak. And there's butterflies in my stomach, and people are like, "You speak? Oh, you're not nervous?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am." But I try to keep it, like, okay, let me go out there, just do it. But deep down inside, I'm thinking to myself, like, what are you doing? you know? And are you going to say something wrong? Is somebody going to laugh at you? Or are they going to point at you? Are they going to boo you off the stage? Like, all the things come to mind. So I can only imagine. Well, I can't imagine how you feel.
Oh yeah. What's worse of someone laughing at you is when you try to make a joke and then they don't laugh with you. And like I feel like that's somehow worse in my opinion. I would rather you laugh the entire time, because at least you're having fun and at least you're
Right.
kind of engaged. But when I like crack jokes and they like don't land and the audience is silent, it's like the worst public
The worst
speaking.
feeling in the world. Or they don't get the joke and they're like, huh?
And
And
it's like
you're
the easier
laughing and
joke.
you're like, nobody's laughing.
Like, okay, I have to move on, quick. But yeah, so that was really good advice for, a lot of young kids. Is there anything that you would kind of say to maybe your younger self looking back, or maybe something on top of that for, the newer generations, I should say, kind of going forward?
If I could go back and talk to my younger self, and even a message for today's generation is be who you are. Stand true to yourself, because so many times we try to fit into a mold and people tell you, oh, you should wear this or you should look like this. People will accept you more if you talk about this, or if you change your message, or if you change who you are. And I went through a phase where I tried to fit in that mold or tried to be who people wanted me to be. And I think I missed out on so many opportunities and so many different paths that I could have taken, and my life could have been different. But because I, succumbed to certain situations and shifted who I was, it was hard to find the real me again. And so I know a lot of times we may feel like we're odd, or we look different, or we don't dress like this, or we're not like this. If you feel like you want to wake up, and I'm sure your generation probably don't know, but they can look this up, who Punky Brewster is. If you want to wear colorful clothes and different things and be different, it's okay. And you have to stand true to that and not let other people influence you, and then find your own tribe. Don't try to fit where you don't belong. Create your own group of people who are going to accept you, love you, and appreciate you. And then that way you'll always be true to who you are. And so if I had learned that at least 10, 15 years ago, I think that my life would be different, because I've shifted so many times based on what people wanted me to be, or who they felt I should be with my personality, and not truly who I felt I should be. And I think that is something that a lot of young kids are dealing with today, teenagers, even early adults, 19, 20, 21. We're trying to be who other people want us to be, and we're not standing firm on who we know. That same little girl who played with Barbie dolls and taught them, that's who I am. The same one who want to encourage and inspire teachers, that's who I am. And I'm not a per se motivational speaker. And because I speak so well, a lot of people try to persuade me that, hey, you need to tell that story that you went through. And it's like, but that's not, maybe on a different platform, but that's not what I want to use my platform to do. I want to use it to inspire and encourage teachers, because without them, we already see that we're going to have a generation of lost kids. And so the more I speak on this, the more aware we become. But
Yeah.
stay true to you. Stay true to who you are, and don't let anyone tell you, oh, well, you need to change this. Now, listening to constructive criticism and making yourself better is another thing. But truly changing the core of who you are, you have to have a temperature gauge and say, hey, this is constructive criticism, or is this really trying to change me? And the younger me, if I can look back and say, Carolyn, be who you are. Stay true to your path. Don't let anyone take you off of it, because you're going to go further. If you get off course, you have to course correct. And that could take 10, 15, 20 years off of where you should be. And I think that now I'm on that path, and I can do those things. And if I can go back and change it, I would, but I can't. But I can change it for someone 19 like you, someone who's 20, someone who's 15, who's 16, who's even 12, starting their business. I can tell you, stay true to who you know you're supposed to be.
Yeah, I love that. That is such a great message. I it's definitely one of those messages that are so timeless, because it's so easy to fall off that track of being like, oh, well, my friend wanted me to wear this or dress like this or do this, and then she'll like me more. And it's so easy to fall for those, because especially once you kind of gain that awareness and you're like, oh,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm just doing this once, twice, three times, four times, five times, and then you're like, oh, I
Who
don't
am
even
I?
remember what I was doing in the first place. I love that advice, because I obviously, growing up as a kid during the social media era, it's so easy to fall for those things like, oh, if I wear this, I'll get more likes on Instagram. And it's like,
Right.
that's not a gauge of who you are. That's not a gauge of people who actually like you. It is just a picture on a website with
Hmm.
some numbers next to it. It's not a real thing.
No.
And the minute I was able to detach myself from that, I could completely feel that like 180 shift in myself. I'm like,
Right.
okay, I feel so much better now that I don't attach my genuine like self-worth to this photo on Instagram. And
Right.
it's been so helpful and rewarding as I grow older. It's like, yeah, I don't I don't feel that weight of like, oh my gosh, it's so embarrassing. Only 30 people liked my photo.
Right. And you can't elevate if you feel heavy. Like I always tell people that
Oh,
only
yeah.
people who are light in spirit and light in all those things that weigh us down, like social media likes and what people think about us and how all those things weigh us down and we cannot elevate with all that heaviness because it's going to keep us down. But if we let those things go, you'll start to know that you'll feel lighter and you'll float lighter and you'll be able to ascend higher and higher and higher in life. And if you can do that, at 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, imagine what type of woman or man you're going to be when you're in your 40s.
Yeah. Well, that is such a great message. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing a few minutes of your time because this
Yes.
has been just such an amazing conversation. And I absolutely loved learning a little bit about you and some really solid pieces of advice that I think are just types of advice that just are never supposed to leave your brain. It's just stuff you should always be hearing. You should always be surrounding, like, yes, I need to go out of my comfort zone. Yes, I need to stay true to my own beliefs, my own personal values, my own morals.
Yes.
So thank you so much for the time
You're so
today.
very
It
welcome.
has been such a blast. Thank you.
You're welcome.